get on with today's lecture. We are wrapping up our examination of social behavior. And you'll remember that last class we talked about kin selection and Hamilton's rule, and how this principle can explain helpful behavior, seemingly altruistic behavior, help that is directed towards relatives, even if they are not your descendant relatives. Helping your relatives is a good way to get copies of your alleles into the next generation. So we talked about why kin selection can promote helpful behavior among relatives, and we started to talk about even among members of the same family group, however, genetic interests are not usually identical. There can be overlap in genetic interests between members of a family, but there's also asymmetries in relatedness. Remember, like you are all more closely related to yourself, for example, than you are to any other member of your family, even to a full sibling. So we'll work through a few more examples of that. But also, I was really happy that after the last lecture, several of you came up and said, well, kin selection makes sense, but how do we explain helpful behavior when it is not directed towards relatives? Because we see a lot of examples of that. And you're absolutely right, and that's where we're going for the rest of today's lecture. So where did we leave off? Okay, so remember we expanded Hamilton's rule this way to make it a little bit more general so that we could look at what is the preferred outcome from the point of view of any individual in the family, any interested individual, not necessarily just applying it to the helper. So for regular Hamilton's rule, if the focal individual, the individual from whose point of view we are looking at things is the helper, then this term here, R sub 2, the helper's, the relatedness to the helper, this is going to be 1. So if we're looking at things from the point of view of the helper, then that R2 cancels out, and we've just got Hamilton's rule. But we can also examine the possibility of help within a family from the perspective of other individuals, not just the individual that is faced with deciding to provide the help or not. So here's the same situation that we left off with. We've got an individual that is faced with the possibility of providing help to their half-sibling. It's a half-sister, so the coefficient of relatedness between, say, you and your half-sister is 0.25. That is the coefficient of relatedness between two half-siblings. In this case, individuals that have the same mother but two different fathers. And again, the benefit to this half-sister, to the individual that would receive the help, is 20 of these arbitrary fitness units. 20 sandwiches, 20 pizzas, 20 extra offspring. Now we're going to look at things from the point of view of your mother. She's your mother, and she's the mother of your half-sister. From your mother's point of view, when should you help? Remember that from your point of view, it was only worth helping if the cost to you was less than 5 units. Is your mom going to say the same thing? What do you think? So click in if the clickers are working today. I'll give you a minute to think about that. And as a hint, what you want to be paying attention to is how closely related is your mother to your half-sister? What's that coefficient of relatedness? What's R1? And how closely related is your mother to you? That coefficient of relatedness would be R sub 2. And raise your hand if you need another few seconds to solve the question, if you're still working on it. Okay, everyone's had a chance to answer. Okay, so let's see. All right, it looks like people are sort of split between C and D here. But very, very few people think that things from your mother's point of view are going to be the same as things from your point of view. Remember, from your point of view, the correct answer would be B here. But from the point of view of your mother, how much of a cost to your direct fitness is worth it if her other offspring benefits by 20? Okay, so if the focal individual is your mother, she's also the mother of the individual getting the help. So R sub 1, your mom's relatedness to your half-sister is the same as R sub 2, your mom's relatedness to you. You're both equally closely related to your mother. From her point of view, each of you is equally valuable. And so from your mother's point of view, she's going to come out ahead so long as this inequality is true, okay? So we can divide now both sides of this inequality by 0.5. That is, we can multiply both of these sides by 2. From the point of view of your mother is probably going to be encouraging you to help that half-sister so long as the cost to you is less than the benefit to her. So long as the cost in this case is less than 20. Okay, so already we are seeing a tension. Your optimal degree of cost that you would be willing to incur to benefit your relative by this much is different, is lower in this case than the maximal cost that your mother thinks that you should incur. So tension within families. This is a type of genetic conflict, and it arises due to these asymmetries in relatedness. You are 4 times as related to yourself as you are to your half-sibling. But from the point of view of your mother, your mutual mother, each of you is equally valuable. So there's a disagreement even among these very closely related relatives in how much help you should be willing to provide to another relative. We can examine this from the point of view of another individual in the family too. So what about your father? Your father is related to you by a coefficient of 0.5, but he's not actually the biological father of your half-sister. So if we were to ask him, hey, how much of a cost should my intro bio student be willing to incur to help out their half-sibling? What would he say? What would be the maximum cost that he would encourage you to incur to help out your relative by this much? In this case, the focal individual is related to you, to the helper, by a coefficient of 0.5, but related to the helpee, the individual that would receive the help, by a coefficient of 0. So is he going to answer the same as you, or the same as your mother, or something else? Okay, let's take a look. All right, so yeah, this is starting to click. Most people really like answer A. Answer A is actually correct. Good job. So we can take this out from the point of view of your father. Again, here's the question: is R sub 1b greater than R sub 2c? And if the focal individual is your father, then R sub 1 is 0. But R sub 2 is 0.5, the coefficient of relatedness between parents and offspring. You are his genetic offspring. Your half-sister is not. And so we can plug these into that inequality. Your father is going to benefit from you helping your half-sibling only if this is true. That is, only if C is equal to or less than 0. So from the point of view of this individual, if your father is the focal individual, then no non-zero cost to you would be worth it, even if it benefits your half-sister by like 20 of these arbitrary fitness units. Okay, so again, genetic conflict, because these coefficients of relatedness, R1 and R2, between any two individuals are different depending on who the focal individual is. And I think this is the last one for this set of questions. But imagine now that we ask not your father, but your half-sister's father. So say that this guy is your stepfather. He is not biologically related to you. Your coefficient of relatedness to your stepfather is 0, but the coefficient of relatedness between your half-sister and your stepfather is 0.5. There we go. So from his point of view, when would he like to see you helping his daughter? Just the fact that the answers are rolling in so rapidly now makes me think that you guys are totally understanding it, so excellent. Okay, so that's nice, yes. From the point of view of your stepfather, an individual that is not related to the helper but is related to the individual receiving help, again, our R sub 1, his relatedness to the individual receiving help is 0.5. His relatedness to you, to the possible helper, is 0. And so if we plug in these, then you can see that the way to isolate C is to divide both sides by 0. So even an infinite cost to yourself would be worth it. Any cost to you is acceptable from his perspective, would increase his fitness if it provides this benefit to his relative. Okay. None of this, of course, requires that individuals are doing the math and scribbling out the equations. Instead, what kin selection favors are these sort of rules of thumb that we are like this helpful to our close relatives and maybe less helpful to our more distant relatives. And perhaps kin selection does not favor providing help to individuals that are not related to us at all. So how do we reconcile, the so-called problem of altruism, the problem of apparently self-sacrificing behavior? Well, when it occurs between related individuals, then it's very often kin selection is favoring these helpful behaviors. So help when it is directed towards relatives, even if they are not your own offspring, even if they're not your direct descendants, they are still related to you, they still have copies of your alleles. And so kin selection, by helping, say, your little cousins or your brothers and sisters or your nephews and nieces, even if you are reducing your direct fitness, you may be increasing your indirect fitness even more. So remember, kin selection expands our view of fitness. And when we consider inclusive fitness, the behaviors that are favored by kin selection actually increase your inclusive fitness. Providing the help to a relative increases your inclusive fitness. And so it's no longer a case of altruism. Instead, helpful behaviors that are directed towards relatives can be thought of as cooperation, something that increases the fitness of both parties, not as true altruism. That's not to say that there is never genetic conflict within families. Of course, there can be, and that is due to these asymmetries in relatedness that we've been considering. Okay. So we're good. People good on kin selection, and you sort of understand how if we frame fitness not just as direct production of offspring, but take a broader view and consider indirect fitness as well, then kin selection can favor helpful behaviors directed towards your relatives. But as people have pointed out, there are many, many examples of individuals providing help. Maybe they risk their life, maybe they give up some resources to help someone else in the same species that is not necessarily a family member. And how can we explain that? And so on the right here, this is a picture of a barn raising. So in communities like the Amish or the Mennonites, these farming communities, sometimes one family's barn will just break down, or it'll blow over on a windy day, or a barn will burn. And the whole community will come out, and everybody will participate, and they will put up a new barn for that family. Now, sometimes some of the members of the community are actually pretty closely related. So maybe you're helping your cousin put up their barn, and we could say, oh, that's kin selection. But you might also do that for other members of the community that are not at all closely related to you. So helpful behaviors sometimes happen between unrelated individuals. And you could say that, well, humans are weird, that humans don't count because humans have like social expectations, and we have morals, and we've taken moral philosophy courses, or we have religion and we're indoctrinated, and that's fine. So I give you the example of the vampire bat. This is another case where individuals will help other individuals even if they are not related to them, closely related to them. So vampire bats, as the name suggests, vampire bats feed on blood. So every night, a colony of vampire bats, every individual will leave the roost, and they'll go out and fly, and they'll look for some sort of mammal to attach onto and drink blood from, and then they'll drink the blood all night, and then they'll come back to the roost and sleep all day. Some vampire bats are unsuccessful when they hunt. They're not able to find a suitable host, or the suitable host wakes up when they try to attach. And so some vampire bats come back to the roost, and they haven't fed, and they're starving. And their metabolism is so high that they're not likely to survive until the next opportunity to hunt. So they come in, and they really need food, and very often another individual in the roost will it'll regurgitate some of its blood meal into the mouth of its starving colleague, and that helps them survive to the next day. Now, sometimes, well, a lot of the time, we see this help between, say, close relatives. So a mother might help her offspring, or an aunt might help her niece and nephew, and that's fine. Okay, maybe that is due to kin selection. However, we also see this sort of helpful behavior, helping out a starving roostmate. It also happens between vampire bats that are not, have very, very low coefficients of relatedness between them. They're just buddies. They just hang out on the same little perch, but they're not actually related to each other. So how can we explain a behavior like that? Maybe it's just a mistake. Maybe bats are just dumb, but maybe not. Okay, so raise your hand if you have heard of the prisoner's dilemma. Okay, maybe not everybody has. Okay, so this is so biology here has borrowed from the field of economics, and specifically from the idea of game theory. And game theory, put simply, is a situation where there's two players, and they're interacting with each other, and each partner in the game has two choices. They can be helpful to their partner, or they can be selfish and not help their partner. And the partner has the same choices. So we can imagine a situation where there's two bats, A and B, and sometimes A will have fed and B has not. So A might have the choice to be helpful, to share its food with B when B is starving, or it could just keep all that food to itself and save those extra calories. And likewise, bat B sometimes will have succeeded in getting a meal, and bat A has not. And bat B, in that case, has the option to either share to help bat A, or to be selfish and keep all that blood, that delicious blood, for itself. And we can identify this sort of matrix of fitness payoffs. Okay, and so the fitness payoff for each individual depends, first of all, it depends on what their partner does. So you're better off if your partner shares with you than if your partner doesn't. But your fitness payoff also depends on what you do. So you are better off not sharing with your partner than sharing with your partner. Okay, so imagine from the point of view of bat A, for example, so let's imagine that bat B is nice. Bat B shares with bat A. What should bat A do? Well, if bat A shares also with bat B, then its fitness payoff is, say, 0.9. Both survive, but each of them are not quite as full as they could be. If bat A doesn't share, if it accepts the help from bat B but doesn't share with bat B when it's its turn to share, then its fitness is even higher. Its fitness is 1. So it does a little bit, it does better by not sharing than by sharing. And likewise, say if bat B is kind of mean and doesn't share with bat A, then bat A is going to do better by not sharing than by sharing. But regardless of what your partner does, it seems as though the rational thing to do is not to share. This is more commonly phrased in this format here, the prisoner's dilemma. So here there's prisoner A and prisoner B, and many of you have heard of this idea in game theory, and two people are accused of, I don't know, pulling off some jewel heist, and the DA puts them both in separate rooms so they can't cooperate, or they can't talk to each other, so neither prisoner knows what the other prisoner is going to do, but each one has the option of either confessing to the DA and implicating their partner, so sort of ratting out their partner, or they can keep their mouth shut, sort of protect their partner. And again, we have this payoff matrix where each individual, so here in this case, we can think of like confessing as being the more selfish thing, and remaining silent as being the way to protect your partner, the way to help your partner. So regardless of what your partner does, say if you're prisoner A and you've got the choice of this option here, if you confess, you'll if you confess, you'll get 5 years in prison, but if you remain silent, you might be facing up to 20 years of prison, which is worse. So the point being that for each of these players, both A and B, the payoff for cooperating with their partner is not as good as the payoff for betraying their partner. So we're going to try this now in a little clicker exercise and see what you guys would do facing the prisoner's dilemma. So again, you can either be sort of mean and selfish and betray your partner, we call that cheating or confessing, or you can stay silent and not throw your partner under the bus. But I'm going to divide you into two groups. So the front of the room, so everybody on like the flat part of this room before the stairs start, everyone on like the front side of the room, you will answer either A or B, depending how nice you're feeling today, I guess. The back of the room, the people on the slopey side by the stairs will answer either C or D. And yeah, let's see what people decide. And we'll see how long I throw you in jail for. And the idea here is to minimize the amount of time that you have to spend in jail. So 0 years is better than 20 years in this case. Okie dokie, let's see. All right. Bum, bum, bum. Oh, that was close. That was close. Okay. Yeah, but looks like both sides. So the front of the room was divided, but ultimately decided to rat out the back of the room. Okay, so prisoner A confesses. It looks like the back of the room likewise was inclined to confess. So what we have is we are in this area of fitness space here. Okay, so both the front of the room and the back of the room get locked up for 5 years. That kind of sucks. It's not as bad. It's not as bad as it could have been, I guess, because if sometimes the front of the room is often more cooperative, I think. Sometimes the front of the room will stay silent and the back of the room will confess. And then the front of the room gets like locked up for 20 years. However, collectively, you guys would have done better to just stay silent, right? Because then both sides of the room would each be put away for 1 year, which is better than 5 years. Okay, so and so this is literally the prisoner's dilemma. So both sides of the room were acting rationally. Both of you did the right thing to minimize your jail time, but the outcome of that means that the whole collective group does worse than if both parties had cooperated with each other by staying silent. Okay, the prisoner's dilemma is an example of what we call a non-zero-sum game. So it's sometimes one partner wins the prisoner's dilemma and the other one loses, but it's also possible for both parties to do pretty well. It's also possible for both parties to do quite poorly in the prisoner's dilemma. So it is what we call a non-zero-sum game. And it is characterized by this type of payoff matrix. It's not always 20 and 5 and 1 and 10 and 0, but there's always, in descending order of desirability, I guess, there's always 4 different payoffs that you could get. So the best possible outcome of the prisoner's dilemma, the only way you're getting off with like 0 jail time, is if you betray your partner, you rat them out, but your partner is kind to you. Your partner does not betray you. We call that the temptation. That is the best possible outcome of the prisoner's dilemma, from your perspective, not from your partner's perspective. The second best option is if both you and your partner cooperate with each other. So both of you are nice to each other. And we call that the reward. So in this case, if both sides had cooperated with each other, then both sides of the class would have ended up with like a year in jail. It doesn't sound like much of a reward maybe, but it's still better than you ended up with, okay? So the reward is not quite as good as the temptation, but the reward is still better than what we call the punishment. So if both sides betray each other, then this is your payoff, the punishment. So the temptation is best, next best is the reward, next best is the punishment, and the punishment is 5 years in this case, and that's what you guys got, and it's still not great. It's not ideal, but the punishment is still better than what we call the sucker's payoff. So if you had cooperated, but your partner had ratted you out, had cheated, then you get the worst possible fitness outcome. That is the very worst. So temptation is better than reward, is better than punishment, is better than the sucker's payoff. And most of you will probably, I hope, never be faced with like an actual prisoner's dilemma in which you have to cooperate with the DA or cooperate with your partner. So I can point to a more tangible example or a more relatable example maybe to university students. Here is an actual question that's on the final exam of, I think it's an economics exam actually, at the University of Maryland. And every year, this guy has put on this, this question. At the very end of the exam, he says, here you have the opportunity to earn some extra credit on your final paper grade. I guess they have like a term paper for this class. Just tick whether you want 2 points or 6 points added onto your final paper grade. Okay, it sounds amazing. You just have to click the box. But, of course, there is a small catch, and that is if more than 10% of the whole class selects 6 points, then nobody gets any points. And your responses are anonymous. Okay, I am not authorized to offer you guys the same thing, so we'll just do this as like a hypothetical thought experiment. Imagine that I had permission from the dean or permission from Professor Nikki to just like give you this option, right? I'll give you like either 2% extra on your final grade or I'll boost you by 6%. You just have to tell me which one you want, but the same catch. If more than 10% of people choose 6 grades, then nobody gets any bonus. So let's just see what people would answer. I sort of already know what you would answer. It's always the same every year. Maybe this is the class that will surprise me. Maybe not. All you have to do is ask for 2% extra and you got it, or 6% extra and you got it. But with that little catch. Okay. So what, do I have to give out? No extra grades. Okay, yeah, people. so yeah, we can't have nice things, okay? How can cooperation ever evolve? Well, the answer to this question, how can cooperation ever evolve, turns out to be, I think, best answered by the response. Prisoner's dilemma is an artificial situation. The situation with the grades is a really weird and artificial situation too. A lot of the cooperative behavior we see between individuals are between individuals that repeatedly interact with each other. It's not just a single interaction with somebody that you'll never see again. You are probably going to keep on bumping into your roommate or that jerk down the hall or the person that sits on the other side of the room. Of your class. So it would seem as though being greedy is the rational choice and cooperation maybe never evolves. But maybe things are different if we interact repeatedly with the same individuals, which is often the case in group living, in species with social behavior. You're interacting with somebody not just once, but multiple times. Does that change anything? So just grab a partner. It doesn't matter if you know them or not, but you should probably be sitting pretty close to each other. And we're just going to go through a number of rounds of, you each reveal to your partner whether you have decided to share with them or not share with them. So you can go like boom, 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 I'm nice, or boom, 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 I'm not nice. And just keep track of your points using this payoff matrix. And just go through as many rounds as you can in the next few minutes. You can use whatever strategy you want. Maybe you're always nice, maybe you're always mean, maybe you do like the payback strategy from that online exercise. Maybe you're nice until they cross you once and then you never forgive, you always hold a grudge. Just get in there, boom, 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 play. Okay, great. So we'll call it there. That's enough of the game. But let's just take it up. Did anyone get like, I don't know, 0 points? Did anyone lose every single time? Yeah, you did? Okay, what did you do? What was your strategy, if you don't mind me asking?
I just basically did thumbs up like a lot of times, but would he be nice?
And he never was. I'm sorry. Okay, yeah. That's what being nice all the time gets you, maybe. Did anyone get a score that they're very happy with? Yeah, you're happy with your score? Okay, how did you have a strategy, or were you just lucky? You played nice, and you both played nice? Okay, all right. And what if you had gotten backstabbed? Would you have changed your strategy? No, you wouldn't have. Okay, all right. What nice people. Okay, so so there's all sorts of theory about the optimal strategy for this, but you can see that when there are and raise your hand if you were nice, if you did thumbs up, say, at least a third of the time. Okay, yeah, a lot of people. So when there is the possibility of repeated interactions with the same individual, then all of a sudden it pays to be nice. It can pay to be nice. And this is when we start to see a resolution to the prisoner's dilemma if there are repeated interactions between individuals. So even if you are not related to somebody, if you're likely to interact with them again in the future, then it can actually be in your best interest to be helpful or to be cooperative, to help them. It may reduce your fitness right now in the moment, but then at some point in the future, maybe the very next time you play the game, they are likely to reciprocate and be nice to you. And so your overall fitness, when we take a longer time view, not just now this second, but in the future, might be higher by being nice, by being helpful. And this idea has, it's called reciprocal altruism, and I sort of hate this term. It was not me that came up with this term, of course. I don't like it because it's not actually a form of altruism. So helping out or cooperating with another individual who's not your relative in the hopes that they will repay the favor later helps them, but it also will probably increase your fitness too. So reciprocal altruism is not truly a form of altruism. It's actually something that we can classify as cooperation. Both parties are benefiting if they can work out cooperation. Because remember, if both parties are cooperating with each other, then they both end up with the reward, which is much better than the punishment for both parties being mean to each other. So we call it reciprocal altruism. Sometimes it's called reciprocity, which is maybe a better name, because reciprocal altruism is not true altruism. So some types of organisms are more likely to evolve reciprocal altruism than others are. That is, there are some ecological factors or characteristics of a species that make reciprocal altruism easier to evolve, more likely to be seen. So, for example, if individuals live in fairly small and fairly stable social groups, and I guess I didn't put it on the slide, but also if individuals are relatively long-lived, all of these things make it more likely that you will have many, many interactions with any one particular individual. You'll keep seeing this person, not just today, but also tomorrow, but also next week, and an unknown amount of time into the future. The more likely you are to have many, many repeated interactions with the same individual, the more it pays you to be nice with them. Nice to them, yeah? What else? Oh, okay. Reciprocal altruism is more likely to evolve if there is, at least the cognitive ability to recognize individuals. So something that has enough brain power to realize when it has been cheated or when its partner was being helpful to it. So recognizing who has helped them in the past, and remember that, and then maybe have the opportunity to help them out. And likewise, the flip side of that, reciprocal altruism is more likely to evolve in species where you can recognize who has betrayed you in the past. And in species maybe where you have a really long memory and you can sort of carry a grudge. And we probably all have grudges that we carry, towards the individual like 4 years ago that said something really, really mean or left their dishes in our sink or something. And having this sort of ability for individual recognition, but also the memory of things that have gone wrong in the past is conducive to developing reciprocal altruism. So can we think of any species that maybe have these traits? Yeah, in the back, yell it out. Crows? Oh yeah, crows are awesome at carrying grudge. Yeah, crows will hold grudges for sure. Yeah, so we would expect to see reciprocal altruism developing in crows. I bet it has. Yeah, anything else? Maybe a species of mammal. Yes?
I'm going to go general and say apes.
Apes, yes. And especially including humans, right? Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Humans are sort of outstanding at this. We are notorious for cooperation, but also for grudge holding. And it's been theorized that many of the emotions that we say make us human, things like holding a grudge or spite or feeling grateful to someone that's helped us out in the past, have evolved for like social scorekeeping. And what's the role of social media in that? I don't know, but here we have people being praised for being a nice guy, like what good guy Greg, and scumbag Steve here gets rightly dragged. Okay, humans are not the only species that are sensitive to fairness. I'm going to try and play a little video here. I don't know if the sound will work, but I hope it does. This is a clip from an experiment that was done on capuchin monkeys. So they're not apes, but they're old world, new world, some kind of monkey. And these monkeys, in case the narration doesn't work, they trained these monkeys to work in exchange for cucumber. So the monkeys would do a task, they'd give the researcher a little stone, a little rock, that is like the kind of work that you can expect from capuchin monkeys. And they would be rewarded by a cucumber. And everything is fine until they see that their buddy who's doing the same job is actually getting a better reward, is actually getting a grape. And then, hang on, here we go.
Franz began the fairness test with the capuchin monkey. These small, clever animals are kept in large enclosures, but for the short duration of the test, they're brought into a lab. Each monkey carries out a simple task, and when both get a reward of cucumber, everyone's happy. But watch what happens when the one on the right receives a grape instead.
Grapes are so much better than cucumber, and the one who gets cucumber gets really emotionally upset by the fact that the other one is getting grapes. In chimpanzees, things go actually a little bit further and gets very close to the human sense of fairness, in that the one who gets grapes also gets upset sometimes. And the one who gets grapes sometimes waits till the other one also gets a grape. So that gets very close to the human sense of fairness.
So the one that's getting the better reward refuses to take the reward until the other animal is being similarly rewarded with the good stuff.
Yeah, that's in chimpanzees. That has never been found in another animal, but the chimpanzee goes much further in that they care about reward division even if they're on the better end of the scale.
Okay. All right. Okay, so as Frans de Waal was saying, capuchin monkeys notice unfairness when they are the worse off. Chimpanzees even notice and are troubled by unfairness even if they are getting a better reward than their buddy for performing the same task. So there's solidarity among chimpanzees. So we're not the only humans are not, of course, the only species that are sensitive to cues of fairness. So then the take-homes from this whole lecture cycle, I guess, about cooperation and conflict. How do we solve the problem of altruism? Well, it's really by realizing that altruistic behavior, truly altruistic behavior, is much, much, much rarer, vanishingly more rare than it first appeared to be the case. So a lot of so-called altruistic behaviors are explained by kin selection. Other apparently altruistic behaviors are explained by opportunities for future payback, so-called reciprocal altruism. In humans, and maybe in other species as well, many of our social emotions, things like trust and gratitude or guilt or resentment, probably have evolved as ways of letting us keep the score and tailor our social behavior appropriately. And this has probably allowed us to develop high-level cooperation. How do we just explain altruism? Well, true altruism is probably extremely, extremely, extremely rare because selection, by definition, selects against it. Cooperative behavior, however, is very widespread. Okay, thank you so much. Remember to do the quiz on the weekend. I'll see you on Tuesday.